Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenelle Riley. I'm so thrilled to welcome you to this screening with Miss Sloane, and I'm so glad you've all seen it so I can talk to people about it. Because, oh my God, that ending, right? At this time, it is my pleasure to welcome the people who brought this film to life. First, please welcome the writer of the film. Believe it or not, this is not only his first produced screenplay, it's his first screenplay. Please welcome Jonny Perera. Also joining us is the film's director. He has, of course, helmed such movies as Mrs. Brown and Shakespeare in Love. Please welcome John Madden. Whatever your favorite movie is, odds are this actor was in it. He is, of course, a 2-time Academy Award nominee and a 5-time Emmy Award winner, known for such films as Terms of Endearment, Kinsey, and Interstellar. Please welcome John Lithgow. Finally, the woman who so embodies the title character. She is, of course, a 2-time Academy Award nominee for her work in The Help and Zero Dark 30. I can't think of 2 more different performances to show her range. She's not just one of the best actresses working today, but one of the busiest. Miss Sloane will see you now. Please welcome Jessica Chastain. Thank you guys so much for being here. Congratulations on a great movie. I don't know if I should say this, but you guys could hear the response from the audience upstairs, and we loved listening to you gasp and applaud. Because this is mostly an audience of SAG actors, I always like to start by asking the actors, how did you get your SAG card? Oh, I've alarmed you. I'm sorry.
I think, do you hear this?
He's a stage actor, he can project.
Test, there we go. I guess I must have gotten my SAG card on my first movie in 1971, I think. A movie that I'm sure all of you remember. It's actually a porno film. It was called Dealing or the Berkeley to Boston 40 Brick Lost Bag Blues. Yeah, that was my first one. It was a big Warner Brothers flop. But I think I got my SAG card then.
So it's good for something.
Is it? It does work.
Hello. I got my SAG card on ER. Like so many hundreds of actors. I played a psycho 17-year-old girl who was abusing her father.
Wow. Such typecasting, right?
Yeah.
So I want to start at the beginning with Miss Sloane, because Jonny, by the way, we have 3 Johns up here, so I'll try to be specific. But Jonny, you are, from my understanding, an attorney from the UK. How did you even start with the idea of writing about American politics?
First of all, can you hear? You can hear this, right? Okay, terrific. This is actually my first script, and I should preface all of this by saying that I wrote this without any intention to show it to anyone. So they say in the screenwriting industry, kind of 1 for you and 2 for them. This is my 1 for me. I wrote it just because I gravitated towards that subject matter. I found it quite fascinating. It all started when I watch a lot of TV news and I read a lot of news online, and I think I was just ironing my shirts one day, and there's this like TV news interview going on with a guy I've never heard of before called Jack Abramoff. Now, He's quite the celebrity in the States, I later found out. I had no idea who he was. I knew a little bit about the lobbying industry, but by the end of the interview, I was glued to the screen thinking, what an interesting and fertile world in which to set either a screenplay or a teleplay. So that was the real genesis of the idea. I didn't know a great deal about the lobbying industry, so that made up the bulk of my research, and I just took it from there.
But I think that's one of the things that I love about it, because I don't know anything about the lobbying industry, and you made me feel smart. Like I understood what was going on, so maybe it was to your advantage that you didn't know.
It was, absolutely. I mean, I could approach it from a place of almost complete ignorance, and I could do my own research, draw to my own conclusions, and I think the fact that I didn't have any preconceptions about the industry allowed me to be a little bit more neutral and less biased towards it, because I know lobbyists have an incredibly bad reputation here in the US. They don't necessarily in the UK, because the industry is much smaller, because it's not so driven by campaign finance.
And you're also polite over there. They're probably very nice.
Well, it's actually funny. I mean, I used to work in Singapore, and I was talking to an old colleague about the lobbying industry, and this was in the wake of a kind of a big cash for questions scandal in the UK, where an MP had been caught being paid to ask a question of the Prime Minister. And what surprised my colleague more than anything was how cheap he was sold, how cheaply he was bought out. Like, he asked this question for like $5,000. Like, a congressman in the US doesn't lift a finger for that, so there you go.
So, first written screenplay ever. How does it find its way to John Madden? And John, what attracted you to this project?
Through the letterbox. Hello? No, not through the letterbox. Down the line. It's one of those rare ones. It came to me as a log line. The way the Jonny's script found its way out into the world is a story of its own. But it just came to me as a log line, and because it described a lobbyist going up against vested interest to put gun legislation through Congress. And, to those of us over there who are not in the midst of this argument and this debate, it's completely baffling and completely transfixing to us as to how that all works. So it was just a script I immediately wanted to read. It was an astonishingly good read. It's not quite the film that you see now, but it sure as hell was there, and it's in the form pretty much that you see it, certainly narratively. And I threw my hat in the ring for it. It was not exclusively on offer to me, but I told my people to... You have them to get onto it and say, look, put my hat emphatically in the ring if you can. Anyway, I got the gig somehow. Look, I have to just say, I've been to 3 SAG screenings now. This is why I love actors. I mean, I've never heard people respond to this material in the way that you do. I mean, just in terms of being so keyed to the plot. You have the insight that is necessary for this sort of film, and it's incredibly gratifying. I always put my head around the corner when I arrive in the theater and just listen to see whether, you can hear a pin drop or whatever, and I immediately know when I'm in a SAG screening because you're just registering everything, and it's so fantastic and that is not an accident. You have insight.
I mean, you clearly love actors, because look at your casts, and specifically this one. And Jessica, I know you and John worked together. You and both Johns have worked together before, but specifically in The Debts. Did he bring this to you, and what attracted you to the role of Elizabeth?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just have to say it's true. John loves actors, and both Johns love actors. And this John said the other time at a screening, if you have an opportunity to work with John Madden, jump at it. He used to teach acting at Yale. That's how he started. So, yeah, see, right? Everyone that studied, like, we know, it makes a difference.
Couldn't get any directing work. That was...
Between jobs, it's cool.
But I loved working so much with John on The Debt, and it was the beginning of my career, and he took a huge risk in casting me when I definitely wasn't the studio's first choice, but I always felt he was in my corner, and I loved the experience of working with him. And since then, every time I had a script where I was looking for a director, I would just send it to John, and he was always busy and never available. And then I got this sent to me, and I knew by page 10 that it was our next film.
And John, how did you come on board?
I got an email from John. John is an old friend. I worked with John in 1982. He directed me in the theater for the Broadway premiere of Beyond Therapy with Diane Wiest. And in fact, I think while we were rehearsing it, John also, you may not know this, he was an absolute top British radio director, directing radio drama in England, which is a serious business over there. And he had been hired to direct the serialized radio version of Empire Strikes Back.
Well, actually, the whole trilogy, in fact.
The whole trilogy. Well, while he was doing Empire Strikes Back, he couldn't find, Frank Oz was not available, and he couldn't find a Yoda. And he was shaking his head and talking to me, and I said,
Can't you see it?
Yeah. We were having some dinner between rehearsal and tech or something, and I said, "Oh, impatient is he?" And he hired me on the spot. So this is my third collaboration with John. He sent me an email before my agents had ever even heard. He said, "You will hear from your agents." But he told me that it was Jessica Chastain. He told me it was a screenplay about lobbying and a gun control bill. And he said regretfully that he could offer absolutely no money. And I thought that was so wonderfully upfront of him. But John, I swear to God, he is a start-the-date director. If he asks you to be in something, you just say yes before you even hear what it is. He's that wonderful to work with. You will not find another director who so enjoys the process of working with actors. And you're all actors. You really look out for these people. You watch and wait for them. And I had been waiting for about 30 years.
Hopefully it won't be another 30.
I heard like the next day from my agents that he was after me. I loved that. But by that time I'd already read the script and said yes. So
what is it like as an actor to know that someone is after you? I mean, what was the last time either of you auditioned?
Well, I've auditioned for a lot of voiceover commercials, and I think I auditioned for about 80 before getting Progresso soup. But I got that one. But no, for theater and film, it's been a long time. What about you, Jessica?
It might have been The Debt, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it was probably my last audition.
And since we have so many actors here, I always feel like I have to ask, are you good at it, or it's such an unnatural process?
She can't say she's good at it.
Well, we're here, aren't we?
Did you ever have any nightmare audition stories?
I've had an audition where, I had many nightmares. And we talked about one where I had to do a chemistry read, and the actor was a famous guy, and he was so terrible to me. That was a nightmare. I had another audition where I was told that I needed to look at a poster of Ethan Hawke with Love and Respect. And then I had another one that I put myself on tape for, and I kept hearing over and over again, the director's so excited, he wants to meet you, it's gonna be amazing, this is it, you're gonna get this part. And I went in and I was like, I'm gonna get this part. And I was auditioning and the director's there, and I'm on camera and he had a monitor next to him, and I'm acting my ass off, or so I think. And then his one comment afterwards was just like, you look nothing in person like you do on screen. It's like, thank you. And I didn't get that part.
maybe he thought he was calling in Bryce Dallas Howard?
Absolutely.
Well, you know, when I was young and just starting in the business, my father was a theater producer, regional theater producer, Arthur Lithgow. And my first equity job was working for him, both as a director and an actor. And I was on a staff of about 4 directors doing a repertory season at McCarter Theater. And my dad, one of the nice things about my dad was that absolutely anybody who sent in a picture and resume got an audition. And they had what we all call the cattle call, you know, like 3 days of seeing 5 minutes each, probably about 100 actors. And I sat there and watched all these New York actors, good, bad, and indifferent, come in and audition. And it was the best education in acting. As soon as I finally got some acting work, I put directing behind me.
Great.
No, I mean, I just took off as an actor and enjoyed it so much I never even tried directing again. But it helped me so much early on to just be on the actor's side as a director and to see what a desperately difficult thing it is to audition. The biggest lesson I learned from that terribly difficult few days was that the actors you really wanted to hire were the ones who clearly didn't need the job. And I tried to pretend that was the case for all my young years auditioning in New York. Just pretend it was all the same to me. You know.
And I would be remiss, since we have John, a great director here, of not asking, if an actor does come in to audition for you, is there anything you want them to know coming into that room that might help?
That they might very well get cast. I mean, that's honestly the most important thing. These 2 guys I didn't have to cast, audition rather, because that's repeat business and I knew exactly what I was getting into. But everybody, not quite everybody, but obviously those whose work I would be able to see and know, that's an informed judgment about a role. But the vast majority of the parts in this movie I auditioned. And I believe everybody's got a shot at the part when they come into the room. And I'm not just saying that because I'm talking to you people. I really believe that. I believe that the part belongs to somebody, and that somebody will present themselves as being the person to cast. It's a very exciting process, auditioning. It's also, I had to say, from my perspective, you will never know this, but it's completely exhausting. I find it exhausting because I'm frankly giving out so much and wanting you to nail it. And actually, it's very... I mean, these people know, because I'm famous for it, watching me at the monitor, I'm just the most ridiculous sight because you're sort of drawing the performance out of you without having anything to do with it, of course. But so it's a very important moment for me, auditioning, and it's where the movie starts to come alive because you have all kinds of ideas about who you want, and there's certain, for example, situations I've been in 100 times where I cannot find the person I'm looking for, and I'm getting a cab on the way home from an audition. I look at a taxi driver and say, he's right, that guy there. And then when you cast the person, you find the person, it's nothing like what you've been describing to the casting director. Nothing like it. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of acting. There is no rule about it. So, relax, do your homework, know your lines, have thought about them, and just do what you can do, is the way I would say it. But it's a very important part of the process. It's not something to be regretted or feared or anything. Jonny, whose first script, as you know, this was, I had the most marvelous time showing him. I thought, okay, he's going to have the most amazing experience here, seeing his words come to life. And they're very, very good words. Every actor wants to get their mouth around this stuff. And this occasion, I was watching him watching the actors. I mean, I remember him.
What was I doing, John? Seriously.
A sensational actor, David Wilson Barnes, who plays Pilsner, who's Jessica's lawyer. You know, he's a very well-versed stage actor in New York, has done very, very little film up until now. He had a small part in Bridge of Spies, but and he came in and he so nailed that part. It was just explosive, you know. I thought, wow. Because I'd read that part 100 times, and Jonny and I worked on it for a long, long time, and he came in and exploded every idea we had about it. You know, and the part was his. He had to come back 2 or 3 more times. I didn't want to make it look too easy. But, you know, watching Jonny, watch him, very enjoyable.
And speaking of doing your homework, one of the things I love about this movie is it's set in a very specific world that I don't know I've ever seen on film before. So Jonny, I'm curious, well, actually both Johns behind the camera, the research that you put into this script and, you know, if you realize at some point how right on you were. And for the actors, did you spend time with anybody from this world?
We certainly did. I just had to speak for Jonny here, and he can talk about this, but he worked as a lawyer for 3-4 years before he'd 2, enough to pay off his college debt. If you pick up all the references in the film, I mean, literally. I said to him, why did you do law? And he said, it's the quickest way I could pay off the debt. But that 2 years gave him an enormous insight, I think, into...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, lobbying and law are somewhat related. A lot of lobbying practices are just parts of much larger law firms, and even though lawyers, the kind of law that I did was kind of like corporate finances or very boring, we didn't do any lobbying stuff, but I got familiar with that world and the people who inhabited it, the cadence, the way that they spoke, you know, the fact that they were always on, always at work, even when they weren't physically at work. You know, they talked at 100 miles an hour, often in shorthand. So that, I don't think I could have written the script without having had the experience of working at an international law firm. And the lobbying aspects was, like I said, it was the bulk of my research. So I said that interview with Jack Abramoff that kind of kicked off this whole process. I got hold of his autobiography and read that, and that was a really kind of good insight into the behind-the-scenes world of lobbying. And then I just read as many articles as I possibly could and plugged any gaps with my imagination and hoped for the best. And we did consult with professional lobbyists, and I was actually quite surprised that, I mean, there are a few technical things that they flagged up, but a lot of producers and people who read the script wrongly assumed that I was some DC political insider, only to find out that I was actually a British guy who authored the script while living in South Korea, having never set foot in Washington, D.C. So there you go.
An expert Googler.
And for you guys, I mean, is there a Miss Sloane somewhere?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just realized today that you read Jack Abramoff's book too, because I remember we were on set. I had said, one of the first things I did is I read Jack Abramoff's book in the research process, and I discovered how much money lobbyists make, and that really helped understand Sloane also. I went to DC. We had a consulting firm for the film, but for me it was really important that a profession, there's less than 10% of lobbyists are women in DC, which is predominantly men, so I wanted to talk to female lobbyists. So I started just Googling, and I got this list of 11 women I wanted to meet. So I went to DC, had interviews with them. I shadowed on Capitol Hill while one was lobbying something to congressmen, and then I shadowed one during a fundraiser, which was really interesting. We talked about their personal lives. I got to view the way that they presented themselves to the world, and definitely the way Sloane dresses is based on a lobbyist. But also, fun fact, also based on my agent a little bit. Yeah. A little bit of Hilda in there.
And tell them about the nail polish.
Yeah, it's something that I never even imagined, because I assumed my character would have no makeup and same clothes for over and over again. 7 out of the 11 women that I met with had black nail polish. Which is, you don't know stuff like that because that's not going to be in a book. So you don't know until you actually go into the world, and that you look at that, and then you have to interpret it as an actor. Like, how can I use this for me? What are these women presenting to the world? Is there something about the strength of black? It's something that's really hard and strong and not feminine, but still put together, and that really helped me a lot.
Wow. I think we're out of time. I'm so sorry. I want to remind everyone that this movie actually opens in, I think, New York and Los Angeles, November 25th. I knew you loved it, so pay to go see it again. And then it goes nationwide, December 9th. Congratulations. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everybody.